This is a stimulus check update and daily news report. Got some big updates to share with you. For example, 7 stimulus checks and payments you could get this month worth up to $10,915, and some are going out automatically. Cases are down 90% in the state of New York since last month. The Build Back Better bill is dead, according to Joe Manchin. I'll play a few different video clips from other Democrats talking about the stimulus reconciliation and how it's still alive. Plus, I'll give you some other important updates as well. Hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday. If you appreciate the fact-based, fast-paced updates, hit the like button down below. So COVID-19 cases in New York dropped by 90% since the beginning of January, saying this is a beautiful sight from the governor of New York. Cases in general are dropping a lot. So if we look at this right here, you can see it just keeps going down. It hit the peak and it is down. So as of yesterday, February 1st, there was 295,000 new cases. Hasn't been that low in about a month. Yeah, so about a month. Cases are down a lot. Now, I wonder if this is because the COVID cases are actually gone, if COVID is actually decreasing, or if people are taking so many tests at home that it's not registering in the system. Let me know your thoughts on that. Also, when it comes to the vaccine, Pfizer-BioNTech coronavirus vaccine for children under 5 could be available by the end of February, people with knowledge say. But in other countries, it's a different story. Cuba vaccinates over 95% of toddlers as young as 2 years old. So the island country began vaccinating children as young as 2 back in September of 2021, making it the only country to immunize children that young at that time. Let me know your thoughts on this, on kids being vaccinated under 5, 2-year-olds. Is this the right move? Is this a good thing, a bad thing? What are your thoughts and opinions on that? Let me know down in the comments below. So when it comes to the Build Back Better, Senator Joe Manchin says Build Back Better bill is dead. I talked about this earlier on in my earlier video that Joe Manchin was asked the question, what's the latest with the Build Back Better? He said, what Build Back Better? And he asked again, like, what's going on with the bill? And he says, it's dead. We haven't spoken about it. So it looks like there hasn't been any negotiations, despite a lot of other Democrats saying that there are continuing negotiations. I don't know what to believe. Here is President Biden talking about the Build Back Better.
The Build Back Better plan lowers prices for families and gets people working. It creates the best educated workforce, hopefully in the world, and ensures it will remain the most dynamic and productive economy in the world. It's good for families, it's good for the economy, and it's good for the country. And so I'm grateful for the support of the CEOs that are here. I know they're somewhat busy, to say the least, and they represent a broad spectrum of the economy and employ workers across the country, from senior executives to high-skill entry-level workers.
That was at the Governors Association with multiple governors, both Republicans and Democrats. Here is Ro Khanna talking about the Build Back Better, as well as a few other issues with the Democrats.
What is your view of where the focus should be of Democrats in this midterm year? You've sort of had interesting takes on Senator Manchin, for example, where you said, I understand what he's dealing with. He's running in West Virginia, in a state that voted for Donald Trump overwhelmingly. Some of your progressive colleagues have suggested he be primaried. What do you think that your party should be looking at on the hopes of holding on to a House? You've had retirements. It doesn't look good at this moment from the outside.
Well, I'm still cautiously hopeful, but we ought to respect Senator Manchin. We ought to understand where he's coming from. We ought to give him the deference of coming up with what he wants, and he's going to propose climate investments. He's going to say, let's have preschool for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old. He's going to be for Medicaid expansion. Let's pass that. That will be historic. It'll show we can get something done. I think we ought to get it to the president's desk. So I have a lot of respect for him, and I think we can come to a compromise. Go ahead.
When you look at these massive pieces of legislation like Build Back Better, how are you viewing it? We're just talking to one of your colleagues, Congressman Schneider of Illinois, and he said he'd like to see it get through however he can, and maybe that does mean pulling all these popular pieces out of it and voting on them one by one. What's your view of that legislation?
I think we can get a narrow version centered on climate that all 51 senators, including Senator Manchin, can support, and we get that through. And then other things we can do one by one, such as expanding the child tax credit or a $15 wage or paid family leave. But we have to be flexible. People want to see we can get things done. The other thing, which Brian Deese mentioned, I mean, he mentioned it as one point, but the entire Democratic Party should descend to New Albany, Ohio, and talk about the 3,000 manufacturing jobs that are being created there. Talk about the 7,000 construction jobs. Intel in my district investing in the heartland. This is economic revival. I mean, if it were Donald Trump with the carrier deal, it was like 600 jobs and all he could talk about. Or Foxconn in Wisconsin. Why isn't the whole Democratic Party in New Albany, Ohio, saying we're revitalizing the heartland of America? It's not about this statistics and this provision and this legislation. That's not how politics works. Politics is about stories. We have to tell our story.
Joe, it's something we talk about on this show. There's too much talk about process. Too many members of Congress out talking to members of the press out in the halls and not going out in the country and talking about things that they've passed historically huge pieces of legislation in the last 12 months.
Well, yeah, and he is singing our song. Congressman, you're singing our song. We talk about it all the time. Just as observers, whether you're supporting Democrats or supporting Republicans or just looking at it, if Donald Trump had this economy over the past year, if Donald Trump had this stock market over the past year, if Donald Trump had the record growth in jobs over the past year, if Donald Trump had the GDP that Biden's White House had over the past year, it's literally all we would talk about. And you touch on this. You touch on this plant in Ohio. This is extraordinarily important, not just for the future of our economy, but to our national security. Why aren't Democrats talking about it more?
We need you out on the campaign trail, Joe. I mean, look, you're absolutely right. Semiconductors. You want to talk about inflation? Part of the reason for inflation is that we were dependent on semiconductors coming from South Korea, coming from Taiwan. Republicans talk about China, 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 and the threat. We're actually doing something about it. We're putting semiconductor manufacturing in Ohio. Talk to folks in Ohio. They're so excited about this. Their kids now aren't going to have to buy one-way tickets out of the community, out of the state. They get to stay in that community. They get good-paying jobs. And by the way, these aren't the coding jobs in my district. These aren't go become a coder. These are manufacturing jobs. These are the new construction jobs. $20 billion investment there. It's more than Donald Trump did for, quote unquote, the forgotten Americans in his whole 4 years. This president is delivering, and we're not out there. We're not telling the story. We ought to be telling the story as opposed to talking about abstract legislation and numbers and data and inflation. Have people in that plant who are going to get jobs talk about what this means to them and their kids.
Memo to Democrats. If you're talking about Joe Biden, if you're talking about Joe Manchin, you're losing. Other thing, Silicon Valley responsible, and this has just happened, for the greatest wealth transfer in the history of this country, from middle-class Americans to the richest of the rich. The accumulation of wealth among the 0.0001%, extraordinary. They're not paying taxes for the most part, income taxes. Why can't Democrats fix that? Why can't Democrats in the House focus more on capital made by billionaires instead of income made by people who are actually working, small business owners that may be making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year?
Joe, we ought to tax the billionaires. I keep saying they live in my district. I'm for taxing them. They keep sending me back to Congress, and I'm the guy saying tax them. Tax the billionaires. Tax the people making hundreds of millions of dollars. Look,
why aren't you guys? Why can't Democrats do that? You've got a Democratic House. You've got a Democratic Senate. You've got a Democratic president. And the Democratic tax bill that came out of Ways and Means Committee didn't do it. They let billionaires, the Democrats' Ways and Means bill, let billionaires off the hook.
You know, I agree with you. I think we ought to go with a billionaire tax. Actually, Senator Manchin, Senator Sinema, we're for that. And I think we still can get that in this new version of Build Back Better. Look, I'm proud of Silicon Valley, a lot of innovation, a lot that it's contributed to the nation and the world. But you can tax the people who have made extraordinary profits and invested in the rest of this country.
Yeah, hey, Jonathan Lemire, I'm very proud of Silicon Valley. I mean, it's people from across the planet look at Silicon Valley. They want to come here. They want to be a part of it. And that's fantastic. All I'm asking is that they pay as much in income taxes as the small business owner down the street that may have a family restaurant. They're just not doing it. As far as percentages on income tax, they're not paying their fair share.
Moving on to stimulus. So 7 stimulus checks and payments you could get this month worth up to $10,915, and some are going out automatically. What is this talking about? I'll break down this article for you. So first, talking about the federal stimulus checks. If you already got your stimulus check, then this doesn't really concern you. But for the people who haven't, this is how you can get it. So basically, for parents who had a baby in 2021, you get a $1,400 check for each baby born in 2021. Families who added a dependent on their 2021 tax return, you get a $1,400 check for that dependent, because with that third stimulus check, it didn't matter what age, all dependents, you got a $1,400 check. And then individuals and couples who earned more than $80,000 and $160,000 respectively in 2020, but less than that amount in 2021, you'll get a plus-up check when you file your taxes right now, which is you can officially file your taxes for in 2022 for the 2021 year. And then the child tax credit, $3,600. So if you were missing any child tax credits, or if you want that other half of your child tax credit, so whatever monthly checks you got, whatever it equaled out to, you get another half now in 2022. So if you had, if you were getting the $250 a month, you get an additional $1,500 in 2022. And if you were getting $300 a month, you get an official, or you get another $1,800 half of your child tax credit. Also talking about California stimulus checks, up to $1,200 there. And then New Jersey payments, $500 there. So this is going to people in Atlantic City, New Jersey, getting $500 checks. And then universal basic income, a few different programs going on. In tomorrow's video, I'll give you an update of all the cities doing universal basic income programs, so stay tuned for that. This is just talking about a couple. So Atlanta, Georgia, you don't have to have a family. You could be single. Basically, you have to be 18 years old, 200% below the poverty line, and live in Atlanta. You can actually apply today. You still have some time, February 2nd until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to apply for the $500 monthly checks, which will go out for an entire year. And then in Washington, D.C., $900 per month. This is for new and expecting mothers in Washington, D.C. Those applications, I think, are still going on. And then we have a tax return to $2,815. So if you overpaid taxes in 2021, you'll get a refund. And then it's talking about how the average Americans received $2,815 in tax returns, in tax refunds. So that's where that number comes from. It could be more, it could be less. That's just the average. But yeah, so that's all of that. And when it comes to what's going on with the jobs report and jobs coming back in January affected by Omicron, here is a quick video clip talking more about that.
And what is the White House doing at this point to help create more jobs and also push back against what all consumers are seeing and are frightened about, inflation and also still some supply shortages?
Absolutely. Inflation is clearly a serious problem. It also needs to be viewed in context of the historic economic success that we've seen. In addition to the labor market, we saw the economy grow in 2021 by 5.7%. That's growth we haven't seen in nearly 40 years in this country. So what we're doing is trying to continue that economic momentum while addressing prices head on. One of the best things that we can do is focus on reshoring and building resilience in our supply chains. I think we have all seen in our individual lives that these supply chain challenges have affected how we buy, what we can buy, when things get here. The more that we bring that production back to the United States, the more resilient we'll be. And the good news there on jobs and resilience is we're seeing a real emerging comeback in American manufacturing. Last week, Intel announced $20 billion investment in building semiconductors. We had Boeing here yesterday announcing the largest purchase of airplanes from Qatari Airlines. That'll create jobs all across the country. So we're seeing companies increasingly interested in bringing production back to the United States. We need to keep that going, and there's a number of things we can do working with Congress to try to get that momentum continued.
And that is all the news that I have for you today to hopefully cheer you up a bit. Here's my daughter Bella's tip of the day.
Bye. And hi guys, this is Bella. This is the tip of the day. That's just my sister clip, but now we're doing my clip. So what I'm talking about now is to you, like when someone's hurt, you should definitely help them, because that if it's like really bad, then you should actually help them. Like I helped a couple of my friends and they loved it. So that's what I want to say for today. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching. Here's some more videos of the kids. All is well with me. I'm going to play some pickleball tonight, even though it could be out like in the 40s. Played the other night too. I just love it so much. I can't stop playing. But anyways, if you want to check out my latest video on my other channels, you could click up here, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Be safe. Thank you for watching.